Well, finally, after a long time, we have some actual hurling to talk about. And of course, some of the new rules are going to be a focus for the conversation this weekend as people wake up to the fact that the sin bin happened and there are going to be multiple penalties for cynical fouls, or maybe not. Give us your views on that. You can leave a comment in the YouTube stream, or of course you can always text the show on 53106. But as Cyril Farrell would say, bang, day one of the league sees Limerick play Tip in Division 1 to preview the season and to talk about the contenders. I'm delighted to welcome Aidan "TAGGY FOGARTY back to the show. Aidan, how are you?
Sure, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited about this. Nice of them to put the marquee game out on the Saturday afternoon for us all to get our teeth stuck into. A nice handy start for Tipperary. So
yeah, a nice one for our neighbours there to get started into against the All-Ireland champions. Look, it's just great, Ger, I suppose, to start off with, just to have it back. God, I think we all just took it for granted a small bit. I know I did for sure, that hurling and GAA was just a constant in our life, and we had an All-Ireland final in December and nothing there for literally 5 months. So it's just fantastic to have it back. And two crackers, obviously, Kilkenny and Dublin, and Tipperary are taking on champions Limerick tomorrow evening. So yeah, it's going to be a strange one because we have nothing to go on, Ger. Only kind of on last year's performances, and sure, like, you can't even judge on that now. We have no Walsh Cups. We didn't have any college even games to even gauge lads' performances, newcomers. There's so many scenarios involved in the league and what you kind of take out of it, and it's all just kind of mashed together. You had 3 weeks training session there for guys, and realistically, Ger, that's 8 training sessions. And what can you do in 8 training sessions? Not a whole lot. So I kind of expect this league kind of to be kind of handbag stuff. It'll be competitive, but it won't be to the high standard of competitiveness that we're kind of used to. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens.
It's wild because the season is over really quickly as well. It's over in August, so this is the start of May, and you're going to squeeze in the league and the championship, and by the end of it, somebody will be crowned All-Ireland champions. I know you're saying it'll be handbags, but if you were sitting plotting the season, you'd be trying to get up to the pitch of it as quickly as possible to build some confidence in the team, because as you said, we don't know who's hurling well or who's in form or who's not in form.
Absolutely, yeah. No, for sure. You need to get to the speed of things really quick. You have to be off the mark. And, you have to be winning games, I suppose, because there's nothing worse than losing a league games and then heading into a championship. Because if you ask me, it's nearly all the one. I know the league is different than the championship, but the games are going to be coming so quick and fast that they won't even kind of regulate what's what. So they need to kind of, first of all, being able to pick the first 15 and 20 for the championship, know who's going well. A lot of teams that didn't go well last year will have to look at players, blood new players. And in saying all that, then they'll have to avoid injury. They'll have to, there's just so many aspects of it. You can't just be throwing in your big players who are carrying knocks maybe for the last couple of seasons, the likes of Joe Canning there or Cotton Mannion carrying knocks there for a long time. These lads are going to have to be arrested, but then again, they need game time to get up the championship pace. So, as you said, usually you'd be starting maybe a club game around now, and you'd have 2 weeks, and then you'd be in the championship and it'd be in September. But it's so condensed, and realistically, there's no even league champions. It'll be a league final, but the incentive there to win the league is definitely not there. It's more so to kind of blood new players and kind of get up the speed of the game.
I totally understand it if you're one of those teams who didn't succeed or didn't feel like you had a good year last year to try and freshen up the panel and get some new players in. But if you're Limerick, for example, you just kind of want to roll on from what you did last year because it was the height of perfection. So do you almost expect no change from Limerick whatsoever, that this is an opportunity for them, another short, sharp burst, rely on everything that you built last year and all the patterns of play and the high water mark that you set, and that's your springboard for this year?
Yeah, for sure, Ger. Like, in fairness, Limerick are in the driving seat. They're in the perfect position. They're our Ireland champions. And then they had no real celebrations. They didn't travel the country with the cup. There was no All-Star strips. There was no distractions. So they literally came back into the fray 3 or 4 weeks ago as a group together. And I can only imagine the kind of crack and the spirit they had straight away, kind of from not seeing each other from the All-Ireland final. And straight away, they're back into a team mentality. And the luxury John Kiley has is he knows he has tested 20 odd players or so. And then you have the likes of Mike Casey coming back, Richie English coming back. There's a few under 21 Munster champions after coming back into the panel there as well. So already I seen the team there, and he's 9 players from the All-Ireland starting, and that's given 6 new players a chance. So he has a luxury, really. John Kiley has. He has the momentum. He has the players at his fingertips. His job really now is to kind of, I suppose, keep guys grounded, keeps the hunger there. But I don't think they need to go with he still has to keep it fresh. He can't go stale, and that's the important thing with a winning team. He has to keep things fresh, and how he does that, and how he implements new players maybe, or keeps the hunger in players, that's his job from here on.
Because under normal circumstances, that would have happened in training games, which we'd never hear about or see until high summer, when it emerged that somebody had taken the place of somebody who we expected to start, but actually the Limerick management team knew that wasn't going to be the case, because somebody was roasting somebody in training for 5 or 6 weeks in a row, and it became inevitable that they were taking the spot.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But we have nothing to go on. And to be fair, I think even management teams can't realistically go on training sessions for the last 3 weeks. Yes, guys are going to gyms and they're running and all that, but to get up to actually match fitness and match physicality and that intensity of actually playing matches, you can't beat that. And the only way to do that is to play more matches and more matches. So as John Kiley, I suppose we're talking about Limerick as their champions, he does have the luxury because he does know his players, and he just has to make tweaks here and there to that team. But the likes of maybe a Dublin, or the likes of a Clare, or the likes of a Cork, who petered out last year fairly poorly in the championship, they're the guys who are under pressure. They're the guys that kind of need to kind of blood in these new guys. And to be realistically, they're going to have to throw them into the deep end and see do they survive. Okay,
so you do expect teams to make fairly significant changes then, because there's no point in repeating what you did last year, where no one really put it up to Limerick at the level that we would have expected them to be able to pre-season, say. Like Tipperary, for example, must have significant regrets ultimately about what happened last year.
Yeah, I think so. Look, John, I think if you've always done what you've always did, you'll always get what you've always got. It's kind of a motto that I've always kind of lived by, and what Kilkenny kind of have lived by, And I suppose you mentioned Tipperary there. I think Liam Sheedy was in for the 3 years, and last year COVID came all of a sudden, and there was no time for anything. There was a bit of panic around the place. So I think Liam went with his tried and trusted, and they looked a bit lethargic. They looked a bit tired. Seamus Canlon, 33. Noel McGrath, 31. Pádraig Maher is in his 30s. These guys are pushing on. So the conundrum now for Liam is that he has 1 year left now. And does he go with the tried and trusted just for this year because of the short window? Will they have it in the legs? Or does he kind of, make the hard calls? Because these guys are all friends. Liam Sheedy trained these guys under 21s. He knows them in and out. They're friends at this stage. But he's going to make hard calls. And on the flip side of that then, is there people challenging these guys in training for their positions? Some people might say, oh, he's gone with Seamus again or whatever, but is there guys actually there competing and pushing Seamus Canlon to the limit of saying, well, you have to keep the jersey if you're good enough? I'm not so sure. They won the under-20 All-Ireland in 2019, beating Cork. Surely there's some of them guys around, but realistically, the only guy that kind of made an impact was Jake Morris for Tipperary. And, he was the only kind of one that kind of stood up to the mantelpiece. The rest of the guys are the real leaders, and they're still the go-to men. But is that kind of fading now at this stage?
Yeah, I mean, it must be very difficult for the 20, 21, 22-year-olds who would have had, as you say, those pre-season competitions. They would have had the opportunity in third-level Fitzgibbon matches. They would have had a club championship that was high profile, and then they would have had all the training to impress. You'd need to be fairly sensational in training to be able to play your way onto a team against a veteran who has 10 years of credit in the bank.
I think so, Jerry. Yeah, I think so. And it's a massive risk for the manager to put them in their place without kind of seeing them through the league. I suppose, look, in my time, I just talk from experience. You go into the Kilkenny camp, you play league games, and usually if Kilkenny have lost, or if any team have lost, the manager is looking to make changes anyway. He wants to make a few changes around the field. He's looking for new blood, he's looking for a bit of honesty, and he's looking for that freshness for the team. And that's what he does with the league. And I think managers mostly have their 12 or 13 guys in their fray, and then there's about 3 or 4 more guys to make an impact. But this time, last year and this year, they haven't got the opportunity to do it. So it's a big call. Do the manager take a huge risk and just throw them in the deep end, or do we stick with the tried and trusted but failed last year? I think it's 6 to 1 and half a dozen of the other.
Where do you expect Kilkenny to be this year?
I think Kilkenny are in a good position this year, Ger, and I'm not just saying that because I'm a Kilkenny man. I seen the team. There's a couple of new guys from Kilkenny on the team. Dara Corcoran, James Berrigan, Wallace is after coming in, so he's after making a few changes. Adrian Mullen is back in centre forward, and Kilkenny were carrying a few injuries there last year as well. Paul Murphy left the panel, retired, so there is going to be a freshness there. They weren't. Look, they were hot and cold last year. Look, realistically, Galway should have beaten in a Leinster final, but typical Galway, kind of their inconsistency took the eye off the ball, and Kilkenny caught them in the second half. And then they were brilliant in an Ireland semi-final, Kilkenny, and then fell apart in the second half. So they're lacking consistency. I'd be worried about the picking of the team. There's not a consistent 15 or 16 guys that's always been played. It's always been these lads can kind of come out of the blue and go, oh my God, John Donnelly's in today, or oh my God, TJ Reid is midfield today. And just as before mentioned, TJ Reid, the reliance on TJ is very worrying for Kilkenny as well. But I think there is a freshness there. I think the guys that played last year, the likes of Whelan there, wing back, Phelan, from Comer there, played very well. So I think they're going to be typical Kenny, a very hard team to beat, but I think they're still missing that kind of X factor or that one or two clinical players up front.
Okay, so if we were to group this in tiers, obviously Limerick are in the top tier. Is anybody right there with them? Like, are Tipperary right there with them, or are Tipperary at the top of the second tier?
Well, it's so hard. Like, Tipperary's year last year was fairly dismal, to be honest. They couldn't. Now I know their games were in heavy torrential rain, and they're more kind of a stick work team. But I think the likes of a Galway weren't too far off Limerick last year. Joe Canning went off injured, and Cotton Manley went off injured, and definitely physically wise, Galway can match Limerick, and that's a huge thing I think for Limerick, because anyone that matches them physically kind of upsets their rhythm. 2018 Kilkenny beat them, and they upset their rhythm because they got into their faces and matched them physically. So I think Galway on their day can definitely take Limerick down. And then, which is kind of strange to say, Cork always trouble Limerick as well. Their running game, the way they play, the fast pace, they just seem to trouble them, and they're not able to keep into them. So if you had a mixture of the Galway physicality and the Cork game plan, that'd be the team to take down Limerick this year, maybe. Okay,
so actually, maybe I'm wrong to group them in tiers. We do, because of the format of the championship, have to take this very much on a matchup by matchup basis, as opposed to, each game on its merits. It's actually it's literally different teams are going to match up against the All-Ireland champions in different ways, and that's what might be their undoing if anybody catches them, because let's face it, they have to be the favourites.
Yeah, no, for sure, they're absolutely the favourites, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Ger. I think it's matchups on the day. Limerick are definitely the best team in the country, but on any given day, I think they can be beaten given the right team, if they're mentally right, if they're physically right, and if they're up for it. If you see Kilkenny there when they took them down, it took everything out of them, for sure, because they flopped maybe in their Ireland final, but they absolutely went for Limerick that day and caught them. So you could tier them. I think it's kind of a Limerick, Galway, maybe tip, and then you have maybe the Kilkennys, Waterfords, Corks, and then probably the Clares and Dublins maybe then after that. But I definitely think to beat Clare, it's going to be on the day, and if you give them one chance, and if you draw the game and there's a replay, I think Limerick will win it. But I think it's on the day that you could actually catch them. And it's maybe Limerick being off that 1% and the other team being up the other 1%, and that could make the difference. But they're definitely the favourites. But I still hope that it's not going to be easy for them this year.
I've got real hope that Clare take a big leap from last season, because obviously in what Tony Kelly did was some of the most remarkable scoring feats, and from either touchline, hitting it over in the depths of winter. It was brilliant for us to be able to sit at home and watch that at the time that was unfolding. But so many of the Clare players were away travelling or were injured that the kind of spine of the team wasn't available to them. Now, I don't know if everybody is going to be available, how everybody is, because obviously we don't know just yet what kind of form everybody's going to be in. But I would really hope that there is a kick left in that brilliant team that came through as kids in 2013.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree. I think there is a kick. I think they were devastated by, first of all, injuries last year. They had the two Galvin brothers missing. John Conlon, who was the forefront of that forward line. Peter Duggan was gone travelling. Like, they're huge. Any team would suffer with them likes of players gone. And if Tony Kelly, the kind of form, if he brings it in this year, and with all them guys back, I think there could be a kick in them, but I don't think there are Ireland contenders. I think they could beat any team on their day, but I still think they're missing just that kind of hard nut ruthlessness that needs to kind of get over the edge on an Ireland final day. And I still think they're lacking a bit. But I think last year doesn't do them justice because they were missing so many players, and any team wouldn't have triumphed as much as Clare without them guys.
The Wexford conundrum, this is year 5 of David Fitzgerald, and we were talking about this with Michael Verney during the week on OTB AM, and he was like, it goes year on, year off, year on, year off. So they're due a year on this year. Last year, in retrospect, they talked about how they trained their eyes out up to and in COVID, and then were absolutely flat when everybody came back, and the way that they had run the club championships in the end didn't work out for them. It looked like it was a master stroke at the start when they had separated the hurling and the football, but ultimately it cost them the kind of sharpness that they needed, and specifically that team needs if they're going to achieve the great levels that we saw the previous year. So what are your expectations? I don't have the same expectations about Wexford that I do have about Clare, and I don't know why. I have a sense that maybe this team is on the way down, and that their peak was actually 2 years ago.
I agree. I think the peak was 2 years ago. I think the style of play, Gerard, that Wexford play with, it's a high intensity, it's a running game, it's man on the shoulder kind of stuff. And to get to that level, especially like if you're playing in Croke Park is a huge field. One run and your tongue is hanging out and you're trying to get back to position. But these guys play from the deep. They fall back for defensive, but they're actually a very attacking team because they all tend to go forward. Foley and Leachin and these guys, they all tend to go forward. But to get to that level of fitness, that level of stick work, that precision kind of passing that they play, they have to be training at least 3 or 4 months, together to get that. Because I seen them in the league in 2019 where that was all breaking down. And then it kind of came together in championship because they just kept with it and stuck with it and trained with it. But they haven't got time to do that now. And I think that intensity of training, it does drain you out of it, absolutely. And I think they're gone a bit stale. And I think they haven't implemented new players. He's sticking with the old guard. And I think he hasn't implemented freshness into the team. And I just think for their style of play, they did it last year, but then it might break down just before a free or a point might just go wide. That sucks the energy out of a team because they play it through the line. They take about 5 minutes to take a score. And then if it doesn't happen, it just sucks the energy of a team. And then you're lacking confidence. And then the whole thing kind of sinks down. So, look, I don't really rate Wexford for this year. I think they need a kind of a revamp or new players into that team.
Okay. The last game of the weekend is Cork and Waterford. Throws in at 3:45 on Sunday afternoon. No one's talking about Waterford as potential Ireland contenders. I haven't heard anybody say that this is a team that is going to build from last year, and I'm not sure why. I think I heard the difficult second album being thrown about. I'm like, is that really? Because this is an elite group of players who have been at the upper echelons of the game now for the last half decade. So the down year was almost the year of aberration for them. What do you expect from them?
Like that, Ger, they're up and down. The only thing I find different with Waterford now is Liam Cahill. He's a tip man. He's very driven. He's very grounded. He's done it on the pitch himself. He's done it with Tipperary underage teams, and I think he's bringing a bit of a more of a kind of a steel and mentality to the Waterford team. I think you were kind of saying they disappear. We're kind of used to that over the years, that they'd have one big massive high year and then they'd fade away. But I think with Liam Cahill and the players he has kind of coming around, the likes of Fagan, the likes of Prendergast, these new guys, they are a different kind of breed, they are a different kind of blood. But they're still kind of reliant on the Austin Gleeson maybe on his good day, because Austin is still very inconsistent, I feel. They're still lacking a bit of leadership, and I think the real belief in them is not there yet. But I think Liam Cahill can definitely enforce it into them. Are they I couldn't see him in an Ireland final this year for some reason. I just couldn't see it. I think they got on a bit of a whirlwind last year and got to an Ireland final kind of out of nowhere. But this year is a massive year for him. If Liam Cahill can keep him grounded and keep him kind of in a high consistent level, I'd see him at about quarter-final, semi-final stage.
I don't want to talk too much about the rules, because I know we're going to end up talking about the rules a good bit over the next couple of months, and it has the potential to turn into the same level of boredom that we all have talking about VAR when it comes to the Premier League at the moment, and I'm desperate to avoid that. But do you think it's going to have a big impact on the actual gameplay itself?
I think it's going to have a huge impact. I think first of all, the big rule for me is obviously the sin bin and the penalty. So if it's a cynical foul going in, if a player takes down a forward, it's a sin bin and a penalty. So it's up to the referee's discretion. And this is where the referees are going to be absolutely vital. In the trust of championship, in a split-second decision, what's cynical play, what's a goal opportunity, and everything else besides it. Where is the referee standing? Is he going to be on the 45 and the tackle is going to be on the 14? Is he going to be in midfield because that ball travels so quick? I think it's going to be a huge aspect to the game. I'm 50-50 on it, really. Look, cynical play, I don't like it. But then again, is there going to be massive decisions made in semi-finals where he was outside the 21, where it wasn't a goal opportunity? So there's going to be so many talking points about it. The one good thing that I think is the rotation of the substitutions. I think it's a maximum rotation of substitutions or 7 or something like that. And I think that's good because, first of all, coming back into the stage, into league without kind of heavy training behind you, injury prone. I think to actually see players, to get a vibe of the whole panel, I think that's a good decision. But obviously the big one is the sin bin and how that will work out. Only time will tell, really. As
a matter of interest, as a forward who, bearing down on goals and you feel a little tug of your jersey, are you throwing the arms up and doing a Klinsmann or a Ronaldo and look, I've dragged to the ground here, ref? I mean, come on.
Absolutely not.
Tell the truth.
If I was in that Kilkenny trainer, I wouldn't have been on the panel. No, look, for me, definitely not. An opportunity of a goal, I would take hardship going in, and I have taken hardship and belts and slaps. But if it's an opportunity of a goal, you go for it. But now, if it's in the player's head that it's
sin bin and penalty
opportunity, yeah, like it's in your head that I will dive or maybe I will make a meal of this, and if that comes into the game, it's going to be absolutely terrible. We've seen it creep into soccer 15 years ago, and look at it now. They're experts, they're supermen falling around the floor. So I wouldn't like that aspect at all. But at the end of the day, at the back of your head, if you get a tug of a jersey or a little trip, you're going to make a meal of it, I think, to get that penalty. Yeah,
and ultimately, what's more cynical, the dive or the attempted foul in the first place? Like, I think there's definitely a can of worms they've opened up here that it's going to be very interesting to see how the experiment ends.
It is, and it could get absolutely out of hand. That, as you said, is it the cynical foul or is it the actual playmaking of the actual penalty that we're going to be discussing? And of course we're going to be discussing. I can guarantee you some way during the summer this year, there's going to be your hands up to heaven and you're going to be rolling around and it's going to be given a penalty. And the whole hurling fraternity will go absolutely crazy about it. And they'll say should not be a rule. And then again, we go back to the cynical play of you drag down a man 14 of a sure goal and then they all go mental as well. So it's going to be a talking point. That's for sure.
You should have done all the dance practice before this came in. In retrospect, it would have been perfect time for you to be out there now with everything you know about making those fine moves.
I would, Jerry. Yeah, twinkle toes and do me tumbles and my acting expression. It's all about the expression and dancing, apparently. And I have good expression now, so I can definitely pull off a dive for a penalty.
All about the picture you show. Good stuff, Aidan. Thanks a million for joining us today. Cheers.
Thanks, Ger. Have a good one.
That's the preview of the weekend's hurling action and the fixtures I didn't give to you. Westmeath and Galway on Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock. Limerick and Tip at 5:30. That's Division 1 Group A. Division 1 Group B, Dublin and Kilkenny is 3:30 on Saturday afternoon. On Sunday it's Antrim against Clare at 1 o'clock. Wexford against Laois at 1:45. And then Division 1 Group A is Cork against Waterford, as I said, at 3:45 on Sunday afternoon. Looking forward to it.